Hi guys! It looks like this broadcast is live, and I know it's a few minutes behind or a few seconds behind when you'll be able to see this. So I will just let everyone come in and get settled. And yeah, if you're watching the Kitchen Fellowship website, you'll see down below the video there is a booklet for the workshop that we're going to work through. You can download that below the video. If you're watching this on Google Hangouts, I believe I put the link to the booklet in the sidebar of Google Hangouts. And there is also a chat box on the website, and also you can find it at talk.io/communitykeeping, and it's tlk.io and then /communitykeeping. And so if you want to open up the chat box separately and the video separately, you can do that. Or you can just find it all on the website, kitchenfellowship.com/community-workshop. And I see Merritt's here. Julia's testing the chat. Glad you guys are here. And there will be some people here that aren't participating in the chat box, but that's all right too. Oh, Julia, hi, it worked. Great. Okay. And there will be some. Okay, I need to pause it on my other page so you can't see that. All right. Because it's playing two places at once, and I'm sure it's getting all garbled with the sound. All right. If you guys want to download that workbook and have it open as we work through the workshop today, you can do that, or you can take notes somewhere else if you'd prefer to do that, or just listen if you'd rather, whatever is easiest for you. All right, so I am Alyssa Passage, and I blog at kitchenfellowship.com, and I blog there because I am very passionate about helping you foster lives of fellowship and restoration, one meal at a time. And so this workshop, the care and keeping of community, kind of ties in with all of that and my passion there. And this is my third online workshop, so I'm excited to keep doing these and keep interacting with you guys in this way. And let's see. Yeah, workbook download link down below this video. And let's go ahead and get started because I think a bunch of people are here now. So I am hosting this workshop because I really want to help us release the fear and the frustrations that we have over some of the things going on in our world, in our communities, in our neighborhoods. I want to shift the conversation and the experiences that we have in our neighborhoods and our communities towards the more hopeful side, towards possibility and hope and encouragement, so that we aren't discouraged by just the frustrating things happening in our world. And then I want to encourage us to embrace the gifts we've been given and to use them for good, to recognize that the gifts that other people have and to help them use their gifts for good too. So that's kind of where we're headed today. And let's go ahead and look at this workshop booklet. I'm going to flip my screen around and kind of like walk through the booklet, but I'll be back. You'll see my face again in a little bit. All right. Present to everyone. Okay, can you guys see the workshop booklet? Okay, good. So we're going to scroll to the first page, and I'm going to talk about some problems. Oh, Trina's here. Julia's here. Great. All right. So there are so many big, heartbreaking problems going on in our world, And I bet you can name a few in your neighborhood, in your local community. And I would love for you to write some of those problems down at the top of this workbook, or write them down somewhere else in a notebook, or just even think about them. Think about the things that you care about that are just going on in our world that are terrible. And this workshop and this conversation that we're going to have today has been on my heart. It's been brewing for months, and I'm an avid learner, and I love to read articles and books and watch TED Talks and absorb all this kind of community development information. And I think I have a certain knack for seeing the pain and the suffering in this world, and I just really want to do something about it. And so I want to invite you into this conversation because I know many of you here at Kitchen Fellowship have that same heart and that same hope for the restoration of our world. And so I want to share 2 examples of some problems that I've kind of noticed in the world, and we'll start there. So I was watching a TED Talk about this war correspondent. He was a journalist who worked with soldiers in war zones and told those stories. And he saw just the horrific experiences that those soldiers and our military personnel had to go through in war zones. And on the flip side of that, he saw how dramatic their experiences were when they came home. Many of them had post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of other mental health challenges. And what he noticed is that all of these veterans and these soldiers were saying, you know, we had such a community over in the war zones, and we don't have that anymore. When we get home, we don't have that. We don't have that brotherhood, that sisterhood, the people that connected us. We don't have them in our neighborhood sometimes. And connecting this, I would read a lot of articles about like mental health for veterans, and so much of the solutions to these big problems is like, oh, the government needs to do something, or oh, the VA hospitals, the veterans hospitals, they need to be a lot better. Oh, we just need better mental health, and we need all these programs. That's what will solve the suicide rate for veterans. That's what will solve post-traumatic stress disorder. That's the solution that a lot of articles talk about. I'm going to leave that example right there, and I would like to move into another example, but I will connect these 2 stories. So a lot of times I'll read articles about like people dealing with suicidal thoughts or suicide rates, and don't quote me on this, but a lot of times when a person attempts to commit suicide and then they go to the hospital, the way that they get released is that they just have to promise a doctor that they won't try and do it again. And those rates for someone trying to do it again are very high. And the solution for those problems, and many of those articles are, oh, we need better hospitals, we need better mental health care, we need better prescriptions for people struggling. So there's all of those kind of stories and those problem-solving ideas, like, oh, we just need these organizations to do other things for us, to do better things for us. And, you know, I see how this stretches across many different problems that we have in our world, whether it's homelessness or addiction or gun violence or even politics. Communities can point to other people and other organizations and other governments and say they need to do something about this. But I believe we have a choice on how we respond to the suffering in this world. And so all of these stories have led me to wonder, what can we do? What can I do? Instead of waiting around for these organizations and these professionals to do something, how can we take meaningful steps towards the care and keeping of our communities, towards caring for our own neighbors? And I believe that it starts with us. So what I want you to do is scribble out the problems that you wrote here. Just cross them out, big red line or black line or whatever color pen you're using. Just erase them, because this workshop and this conversation, it's an invitation to shift the conversations that we're having about the problems in the world, to shift towards something better. Because when we only focus on the problems, that's all that we talk about. That's what brings the fear and frustration. That's what brings a lack of change. There's this Native American legend that says, the wolf you feed is the one who wins. So we have a choice on if we're going to feed all of that anxiety and that frustration in our world, or if we're going to feed joy and hope. If we're going to focus on and feed problems by the way we talk about them, or are we going to feed the possibilities and the good things that we could see happening in our communities? So I believe it is time to focus on something different. Oh, I see Merritt in the chat box. He said, our tendency is to blame and say someone else needs to fix it, but the only thing we have control over is our own response. That's true. We only have what we can do, and I think we've been brought to this world to impact it for restoration and for the good. So I think that can happen when we make the shift, and I'm going to give these 2 fill in the blanks here. So from fear and problems to the care and keeping of our communities. So from fear and problems to the care and keeping of our communities. So let's go ahead and scroll to the next page, number 2, and let's have a conversation about how we can make that shift, what it would look like to move from problems and fear to the care and keeping of our communities. So if everyone's on page 2 in the notebook, let's get started with that. I love this quote by Peter Block. He is a community developer and he writes a lot of books about it. And the quote is, create in the room a living example of how you want the future to be. Then there is nothing to wait for, because the future begins to show up as we gather. What does that quote make you feel? How does that make you feel? For me, it makes me think we don't have to wait around. We don't have to wait around for change to happen, because if we are behaving and dreaming and thinking and expressing how we want the future to be in the here and now, we can just make it show up as we gather. It's just so encouraging to think about the things going wrong in our world in a different way, to think we can be positive and show up together and gather in a hopeful space, in a hopeful way, and things can change. So we might have a good idea of how we can care for our families, our friends, but what about caring for our community and our world? I believe that community development can start with one person at a time. It doesn't have to be an organization or a government or a nonprofit or any big group. It can just be us. It can be one person at a time. And I think when we place more value on possibilities and less focus on all of our problems and the lack that we have in our communities, that shift will begin to happen. And so this is your invitation to shift the communal experience. You are one person, and I believe that you can make a difference. And so I've noticed when I've gone to things around my community and gone to events, there's this mindset that, like, if we want to fix anything, we need to have a program for it, or we need to have an activity for it. But if we make that shift, I'm going to give you another fill in the blank here. If we make that shift to relationships and connectedness, I bet you that community and fellowship will grow out of that. So instead of planning events that are complicated and just in depth, what if we just got together with people, spur of the moment, or planned out, like, hey, come over 2 weeks from now. I think if you place more focus on relationships and being connected, when you gather, our communities and our futures will begin to change, because you're not so focused on, oh, we need to cover these 5 things in this activity and these 5 things in this program, and we're just all here to do this transactional event, and we're not going to look to our neighbors next to us and get to know them on a personal level. So it's good to shift that communal experience from programs and activities to relationships and connectedness. So I don't know about you guys, but when you attend events in your community, think about how you might be able to be more relational at those events instead of transactional. And then this next fill in the blank, being entertained and entertaining people. I think that can happen on a lot of gatherings. What if we made the shift to being invested and accountable to the good that can happen in a place? So that fill in the blank again is being invested and accountable to the good that can happen in a place. How would that change your community? If you were invested and accountable to the good that can happen in your community, would that change your community? I bet it would. So I believe this care and keeping of your community can happen anywhere. It can happen in your neighborhoods. It can happen at the meetings you go to, in your workplace, in your home, in your daily interactions with people out in your community, even if it's just like a 5-second hello to your mailman or to the person changing your oil. It can happen when you're traveling. It can happen in the online world, when you're commuting, when you're running errands, anything. We can care for our communities and we can keep our communities well anytime we're interacting with it. So how do we create this type of environment and this type of future that we want? I think instead of focus, if we make that shift to focusing on the people in our communities and their gifts and our gifts, we can create that type of environment, a hopeful environment, a future for our communities and for our world, when we're focusing on the people in it and their gifts and our gifts, and we're combining our gifts together to make something incredible. So let's scroll to page 3. Oh, there we are. And I see, Julia, you wrote in the chat box, I almost called it a cat box, a chat box, from casual to intentional. I love that. And Merritt, you said it definitely requires intentionality in the chat box. That is so true. And I know, Merritt, you were talking about this yesterday, like moving from small talk to conversations that are actually meaningful. What it looks like. So we're on page 3 of the booklet for the workshop. And this verse has really been coming to the surface for me as I read a bunch of these community development books. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in various forms. So each of you should use whatever gift you have received. So you guys have all received gifts to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. So I know that we have all been given I'm reading the chat box right now. Julia says, we've been in this house for over 15 years. I've never had any deep conversations with a neighbor, but I long for that. Oh, Julia, I hope that you find simple and meaningful ways to connect with your neighbors, and that they're responsive to that. I know that not everything we do and try to make this world a better place is met with receptivity, but I do hope that can begin to happen and that shift can take place in your community and in your neighborhood. So back to gifts. Think about the kind of gifts that you have. And if you kind of are wondering, like, well, what are my gifts? I don't really know. Ask some of your friends. Tell them to point out in your life what you've been gifted with. And I love that when we use our gifts, God's grace is kind of poured out in its various forms, because we are all unique and we have all been given so many gifts that will enhance our communities. And my gifts are so different from yours. Maybe there's some similarities, but I love that we're all unique and we've all been gifted differently, so that no part of this restoration of our world and our communities will be lacking when we come together and think about possibility together. So in the larger context of this chapter, 1 Peter 4, it kind of talks about being alert so you can pray. It talks about loving others deeply, offering hospitality, committing yourself to God, and continuing to do good even in the face of suffering. And we're doing all of these things with the strength that God provides. And that is an encouragement to me, so that, using our gifts is definitely tied to prayer. It's tied to loving others. It's tied to hospitality. It's tied to doing good in the face of suffering. And we don't have to do it alone. We can do it with the strength that God provides. And I think when we are using our gifts, we won't be defined by what's missing in our communities or what's broken or what's wrong. We'll be more defined by what we're creating together. When people come together, what they're making and what possibility lies with all of us collaborating together. What would it look like for you guys? I'm just kind of throwing this question out there, and it's not one of these big, long questions, but what would it look like for you and your community to be defined by your gifts or by their gifts? What kind of meaningful relationships do you think can happen when you are using your gifts together? See, Julia wrote, wow, I never thought to include prayer. I would love to knock on a neighbor's door and ask if I can pray for them. Do it, Julia. I would love to see how that opens doors for you. And I love that we can pray with other people, and we can also pray just on our own, that this type of hope is ushered into our communities. All right, I have 3 questions for you guys to consider. And I am going to flip my screen again. Techie stuff. Hold on just a minute. I think I have to stop sharing. Okay, and now I'm going to share it again. here are the 3 questions. What gifts do you hold that you have not fully brought into the world? So question number 1. That question is by Peter Block. I like Trina saying in the chat box, years ago we went through a community and prayed with people. I was amazed at how many people were receptive to that and welcomed us in to talk. Yeah, I think if we realize that so many people in our neighborhoods are longing for fellowship just like we are, that kind of removes some of the fear of connecting with other people. If you think you're all just in the same boat, it's easier to make those relational connections. So question number 1, what gifts do you hold that you have not brought fully into the world? So what is your community longing for that you need to bring into the world? You need to bring to your neighbors. Because we're doing a disservice to our communities and our neighborhoods when we're not giving those gifts. The next question is, what do you want to create with and within your community? And these are questions that you can come back to time and time again and just really meditate on them and journal about them and talk with other people about them, because they will change a place. Question number 3 is, what gifts in others have you noticed? How do you plan to affirm the gifts of your neighbors and community members? Oh, Julia, I like your story in the chat box. I'll never forget a day I was homebound and crying and asked God to send someone to pray with me. Within an hour, a group pulled into my driveway to share the gospel. They prayed with me. They were from 800 miles away and just randomly picked my house. God is amazing. I never thought to do the same in my own neighborhood. Yeah, do it, Julia. I'm excited to see what happens. So question number 3, I'll just repeat that again. What gifts in others have you noticed? How do you plan to affirm the gifts of your neighbors and community members? So I just invite you to continue to ponder these questions and put them to good use. When you find the answers, and they will, I'm sure they will unravel and unfurl over time. When you find those answers, though, it's great that it'd be great if you can take action on those answers. And your gifts and the gifts in others, they don't have to be complicated gifts. They can be simple. A lot of people have mentioned to me before that I am super calm and I'm a calming type person. And that is a gift that I need to use more in my community to calm down people's frustrations and fears and just let people be in a place where I can hold that calmness for them, where I can foster that in an environment for them. See, Trina and Merritt are talking in the chat box a little more. I think I've been missing togetherness. I keep thinking of how to use my gifts, but I think what's been missing is teaming with my friends who have other gifts, some that are more on hospitality and outgoingness. Sadly, I really don't know many of my neighbors, but I want to change that. I barely know my neighbors. 3 of them are elderly and home all the time. Me too, Merritt. I want to change how silent and hidden I stay. I love that you bring that up, Julia. Merritt says I am super calming. Well, thank you. In the chat box, Trina, you said that you've been missing togetherness, and that is the key of this workshop. Like, it's about coming together as a community, and it's about partnering with people who have gifts that you don't have, or have gifts that are more in depth. Maybe not more in depth, but I know, Trina, that you can be hospitable, but if there's someone else who loves hosting and cooking and all that, and you'd rather just put resource materials together, or you'd rather just have smaller conversations with people, that is great. So I just want to affirm you in that. Go out there and link up with people who have the gifts. Merritt says, one of our neighbors comes over whenever he sees us outside, me and my young daughter. Sometimes I feel a little fearful if my husband isn't home, but I think he's just lonely. Yeah, that could be Merritt. He could just be lonely and he's just looking for connection. All right, I am going to go back to these questions. So I would love for you guys to consider these questions. And Julia, I love what you said, that you want to change how silent and hidden you stay. Because I believe this process of care and keeping of community, it needs to happen out loud. It needs to happen where other people can see us and hear us having these conversations about shifting the nature of our experiences in our communities. Because if I'm all alone here, just sitting in my home thinking about, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could change the community this way? Oh, wouldn't it be great if we could create this awesome thing together? It won't happen because I'm not telling other people about it. So I think when we express our desires verbally for community development and for the restorations of our neighborhoods, so much is possible. So much can change. So much can happen because other people will begin to connect with other people who care about that same kind of thing too. So what would happen if you talked about this stuff in your own neighborhoods, in your own towns, online? What if you shared your passion for the care and keeping of community with others? I believe that other people will start to hear you and will start to gather with you, and this forward momentum will just well up and take place. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen again, and I want to share on another page. Let me find it. Okay. All right, we're going to scroll to page 4. And a friend of mine from my community shared this quote online the other day, and I just love it. Fred Rogers. I believe that appreciation is a holy thing, that when we look for what's best in a person we happen to be with at the moment, we're doing what God does all the time. So in loving and appreciating our neighbor, we're participating in something sacred. And I think the same is true when we are calling out the gifts in other people. We are appreciating what is sacred, and we are pulling out a sacred gift in them for the betterment of our world and our communities. Julia says, I thought of handing out flyers down my street for a craft night at my house, but I haven't figured out what's next. Julia, do it. Be crazy. Hand out a flyer for a craft night at your house, and people will come because people love to be connected and they are lonely and isolated. And I know, Julia, you have such a gift for crafting, and I know people would love to just be in your presence, your warm, welcoming presence, and craft with you. Julia says one of her biggest hindrances is your fear of rejection. Yeah, My friend Christy and I love crafting and art, and I love hosting, and have art and eat retreats at my house where I host and cook, and my friend Christy, hosts the craft portion of the night. And we were kind of scared that no one would come, but we decided to do it, and I think we had like 12 people the first time. So just go for it. And one of the things that because if you are not trying at all, you're not gonna be able to do anything. So if you are trying and you're getting rejected, it means you're in the game. It means you are caring about your community and you are moving forward in fostering fellowship and relationships and connection with the people around you. Oh, thanks for that story, Trina. That one person showed up to an event that you planned and you were disappointed, but by the end of the night, it was clear that that one person needed to be there. I agree. And let's see, page 4. So, how will you choose to see the good and the possibility in people, in your communities, and in yourself instead of what's lacking? So, set an intention if you want to. I'm not forcing you, but if you would like to, I would love for you to set an intention about how you will choose to see the good and the possibility in people and in yourself and in your communities instead of the problems lacking. And an example of this, I was reading in one of my community development books. There were some kids who were drug dealers on a corner in this one community, and people would just be so fed up, like, oh, those bad kids are just selling drugs and they're the problem. But someone came along and realized, no, these kids are entrepreneurs. And we can encourage that entrepreneurial spirit, but just direct it somewhere else. And we can come together with these kids and have relationships with them and ask them, like, what is your life really like? What do you need? What can we create together that would be good for our communities? And that shift began to happen. Friendships were formed instead of that pointing finger of like, oh, those bad kids. So I think our intentions and our actions can shift us towards the hopeful side and really help us to focus on the care and keeping of our communities. So this down below here is how you can keep in touch with me after this workshop. I'd love to hear from you. And I have a few more things I'd like to talk about. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Here I am again. I see you guys are talking in the chat box a little bit. Trina, seeing them as entrepreneurs, yes. Julia, I will help keep you accountable. Tell me the date that you are going to plan your craft night for September. And even if you need help brainstorming craft ideas, which I don't think you do because you're such a crafty genius, I would love to help you with that. And all right, I'm going to open up the box. I know you guys have been like chatting in that the whole time. Julia says, okay, I'm going to do this. Great. If you guys have any questions about this workshop or the things that we covered, I would love to field those questions right now. And if like over the next coming days or weeks or months, you have ideas or questions that come up, you can email me at alyssa@kitchenfellowship.com. We can set up a time to Skype if you want. And then I just love to encourage you as you care for and keep your communities and your neighbors, as you get to know people, as you dream about what's possible and that you just live that out in your daily interactions and as you gather with people, I just want to encourage you, because you are one person, but you can do this, because other people will come around you when you begin to take that initiative and to be vocal about the ways that you want to care for your community and the ways that you want to use your gifts. Let's see. I see more comments in the chat box. Okay, Julie, you want to do more baking for neighbors consistently. I guess my question there would be, like, what kind of personality do you have? Like, what kind of things keep you accountable? Because for me, it's other people and having something listed on a calendar. Maybe it's internal motivation, but whatever works, put those things into place and then bake for your neighbors. Julia is on the Kitchen Fellowship page. Yeah, she is. You guys can tell us more about baking for neighbors there. Baking for neighbors. You need to take that up, Trina. Yes. Or Trina, even like writing for neighbors or reading for neighbors or speaking for neighbors. I love the way that you can speak and write, Trina. And I love the healthy smoothies that you make. Maybe your neighbors would like some smoothies. Any other questions, the things that we covered today? I don't see any more right now, but I want to let you guys know about a blog I am going to share either probably next Thursday. And I met this new friend online, and she writes at the Servette blog, and it is all about cross-cultural hospitality. And she is a genius. I mean, she says she's not, but she is a genius when it comes to opening up your home to people who are from a different culture than you. And I don't have a lot of experience with that because I live in a small town, and we don't have a ton of broad culture here, but she has traveled all over the world, and currently she's in Germany with her husband, and so I'll be sharing that post, and I think you guys will love it. So thank you guys for being on this workshop today. Oh, I see some more chats. Writing for neighbors. Never thought of that. I know, Trina. I don't know. It might be fun. Trina says, I'm wondering if I should be focusing on reaching out to neighbors or community around my kids' school. I'd say pray about that and then take some action, because it could be both. And you don't have to go deep in all of these relationships. Like, you don't have to be BFFs, best friends forever, with like your neighbors and then all the kids at all the parents of the kids at your kids' school and like your church community and then other like organizational communities, whatever. Like, you don't have to be super in depth with everyone, but if you just carry around this mindset of like, how can I care and keep for this person, this neighbor, this person who is in front of me right now. And I know, Trina, of where you think that you should be investing your time right now. And sometimes you can pick an area, like one area to go really deep in, or like two areas, and the rest can just be like meaningful interactions and meaningful community development. But I would say too, like, where are you most passionate, and where are your gifts going to bring the most impact? Is that in your school, your kids' school community? Is it with your neighbors? Yeah, I know you'll find the right answer. And that you will, I know you'll keep innovating until really awesome things begin to happen. So, all right. It's a little early, 4:47, but we're going to wrap up this workshop, and I would love to just continue to stay connected to you guys. Alyssa at kitchenfellowship.com, or you can find me on the blog, kitchenfellowship.com, and then just click on the blog tab. So take care, and thanks for being here today. Oh, Tina says one more thing. That's helpful. They're not all meant to be deep. That's right. You know, you can't be all things to all people. So just be who you are out in your community, and then go deep with certain groups or certain people in the areas that you're passionate about. So thanks, Merritt, for being here. Thanks, Trina and Julia and all the other people who have been watching live. If you're watching this on the replay, I'd still love to hear from you. Thanks.